You could even say like how you got to know Corey as
That's
well.
true. What
I think it
first
would be
impression?
Suffering, micro trauma,
First impression.
codependency,
No, I
trauma
mean,
bonding. Sorry.
okay. To be fair, I
What are you
think
talking about?
I was
Hebrew. We're
introduced
talking about Hebrew.
to you. Well, I mean, that's
Whoa.
when we actually got to know each
Yeah,
other.
that's true. I'm so sorry.
No, 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 no. I know I'm forgettable, John. Please. But no, I remember the first week, or it was like early on in the whole thing. And I'm like, here are two really cool people from New York, and then I'm just trauma dumping while we're walking around a park.
No, it was nice. I enjoyed it.
I know.
I'm glad it was fun.
It was literally, that was my first seminary experience.
I don't think I set a great tone for you then.
No, we're friends now. Think about it.
Fair
It
enough.
all worked out. That was an intentional seed. In my opinion, I know that.
Planting.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this is John and Anam. Welcome back to our podcast. So today we actually have a guest on this episode. We have our friend Corey. So Corey, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I am a pastor from Washington State who made it all the way over here to Michigan to study for my MDiv, and yeah, I think of things every once in a while, and I share those thoughts.
Yep.
And sometimes they're helpful, most times they're not.
I would
But-
disagree with that, but
Yeah.
So we met as soon as we both entered the seminary, right? And we got a chance to trauma bond together and further explore the depths of brotherhood
Yeah. In the trenches.
in the trenches. That's actually so true. Yeah. But we're glad to have you on. This feels nice. I wanted to throw an icebreaker your way, both of you guys. Doesn't have to be long, but like as we were talking, it struck me that this is a cliche question, but what Bible narrative relates to you the most, and why? And if you could give some type of description.
Ooh, that is a good question. I think there's so many good ones to pick from, but lately my kick has been Moses. I relate to for multiple reasons, as we'll touch on.
All right.
But even more so, just being a more introverted person in a pastoral ministry, you like off the bat, there's always part of you going like, how can I deal with all these people every day? I'm ready to murder someone. I'm not sure who just yet, but and you just kind of are always reaching that point of like feeling overwhelmed and then self-conscious and like, what do I have to say? And so much Moses' story just speaks to that, of literally this dude just went out after being in a place of royalty, of having access to everything. He goes out and he spends 50 years in the desert. That's an introvert who found his calling of like, I am just done with people. Give me the sheep, leave me alone. And then God calls him and says, look, you've been dealing with the sheep. I need you to go take care of my sheep. And he's like, how about no? And God's like, how about yes? And the back and forth, and like, even just think about how I'll go back and forth with God way too long before he finally is like, okay, look, man, I'm opening the door. You're going through it. We're going to get through this. And I'll give you the words. That I think is the most important part. I abhor public speaking. And yet he put me in a profession where I have to do it regularly.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, ain't no way I'm doing this unless you put the words in my mouth. And he's given me them. And then on top of that, just like leading people when you get frustrated. I love people and then I hate people. And I feel like Moses' story just speaks to that so much.
Yeah.
You know? It's probably him.
Side note. Moses, Corey, has a staff, a robe.
Yeah. So I'm not helping things by this. Should we share the Hebrew? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's what you're getting at. So okay, so part of the story here, John and I really started getting closer together when we went through an intensive Hebrew course together, and we really bonded just being over that space. And the way I learn best is through teaching. So being able to dig into something so much and be able to then like put it out and help other people think their way through it, I can study really well with that. So end up in a study group with John.
Yeah.
He kind of organized it, brought all of us together, and we all grew really close with it. And I kind of just took the lead of organizing how we were going to be teaching and studying the different information. And in the background, our professor had been talking to John, and he started referring to me as the Moses of the group, the leader through it. And to the point where I didn't quite know about it until John brought it up to me in front of the professor.
Yeah.
And then now the professor only calls me Moses. So
I forgot that.
So
it happened the other day.
I appreciate the man a lot. I love him and respect him so much, but I'm pretty sure he has no idea what my name is. And we spent hours in class with this man. And it's like other sort of like literally saw the man in the hallway the other day. I'd say, "Oh, hi, professor," and he just goes like, "Oh yeah, hi, Moses," and then didn't even click.
Yeah.
It's like, all right.
And I heard him mutter it.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the heck?
It was.
And
It was whack. So it doesn't help my case though. I definitely have a robe and like a legit wooden staff, which I will argue, I hiked more in the PNW than I do now. So now. Yeah, I have the look. I grew out my beard at the time even more. I guess I'm accepting it. I get to be Moses at this point.
That's what's up.
You know?
With the Miriam screams.
Oh yeah, just all the time.
I keep remembering the show every single time.
That's
the
beautiful.
looks at the camera from Moses of like dealing with the people. Oh my goodness.
That's definitely Corey.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. That is my. I will meet eyes with John across the room and go like, really?
Yo,
This is what's happening right now.
crazy. Like high key, we keep doing that in class. Like every time somebody says yada, we're all just like looking for the group members. Like, anyways, okay.
Yeah.
What's yours?
Mine will always be Jacob.
Oh,
Jacob.
I didn't even expect that.
In terms of when he was wrestling with God. I feel like that's the story of my life. Like, I am trying to do things my own way, and I want his blessing, and God's just like, I've been trying to bless you, but you're just taking it on your own. And I'm just scared of the injury, of like what he's gonna do.
I'm sorry, you're about to lose. Well, I guess he didn't lose a hip.
You
but
didn't. It was
you're,
unhinged.
Yeah,
I mean, I have a staff if you want to borrow it. It'll.
maybe.
That is funny.
We'll get
But yeah, that's always been, I think the last year, that's been a story that has resonated with me. And it kind of, I don't know why it just constantly comes back. Like, I feel like I'm like that person. But yeah.
That's dope.
What about you?
I have a mixture of people, but it's just all the young people who know nothing at first, you know? Like, I just resonate with that. I'm like, I'm not even expecting to get to the place where, like, I know something. But
He's the kid that falls out the window and Paul's whole story.
oh, my goodness.
Yeah, gets revived.
Yes, basically that.
Yeah.
But specifically, I think Jeremiah. And I do like how, I mean, Solomon at the very, 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 very beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, early on.
Not moving anywhere past that.
We'll just...
It's just, I love the humility of these characters when it's not even probably just straight up like reverence, humility. I'm sure it is, but I think there's a fear because they're taking
the
on
timidity that you were talking about.
Yeah, there's like huge tasks ahead of them, and they're like, nah. And I'm just there. That's really how, like, I'm like, Lord, you know me. And he brought me to that book so many times, and Jeremiah's just like, yeah. So if any, I just think that's my number one go-to right now. I relate to that the most.
Well, and it's such like a beautiful moment where we always are always celebrating those moments where it's like the people who stand up and go with God and like, no qualms, no questions, or they were afraid and they stood up. Like, I think you guys maybe heard the joke of, everyone talks about the whole motif of like, there's two sets of footsteps in the sand, and then there was only one. And Jesus says, "That's where I carried you." And I like the continuation where it's like, "That's where I carried you." Over there is where I pulled you by your legs, where you're kicking and screaming. And over there is where you hit your head on a rock. I don't know why you did that, but like it's.
Corey got jokes.
It's that real, it's the real experience. And I think we don't spend enough time with the prophets that, man, they lived hard lives that they got frustrated with too.
Yeah.
I like the continuation past that where it's like.
Because it's like a nice poem. The footprints in the sand.
100%. We only show the nice part. We don't.
Oh, that's what I'm trying to get at. Like, you see the footsteps almost turning around. It's like, that's when I almost returned you. But then
that was where I had to sit on the rock and go like, I'm just gonna let this guy walk around for a bit, man.
I'm gonna just chill.
Yeah. I need 10 minutes. All right. 10 minutes.
This Jacob guy really got me bent out of shape, man. Anyways. All right. So what are we talking about?
We wanted to talk about solitude.
Yeah.
Because we've been I guess like we're all part of the worship experience on a campus, and you brought up a really good topic of I think it was identity in solitude.
Yeah.
And we were like, everyone was like, ooh, because it's not you're not talking about loneliness.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of one of the important starting points is we need to understand what we're actually talking about with solitude. I think the important thing to know is it's not isolation. That's not what the purpose of solitude is. I think we can get it mixed up for that, but really a space of isolation, a space of pushing everyone away is really just another means of coming to a place of self-worship in a way, be it in the form of I'm so great that like, man, y'all are on my level and that part of it, but also in the sense of saying, I am so much nothing that I cannot be all this. Cause then you're still like leaning into your own reasoning.
Yeah.
That's part of the issue with it. I would say in my mind, solitude is, I think a component of it is being alone. We'll get to that. But I think the heart of it, it's creating space to be fully present with God. And often in our world, that means putting away a lot of other things, putting away, I think, most other people. And that's not, the important thing is that solitude is not forever. Yeah. This is a part of your walk, but it's probably in my mind, one of the most important pieces of your walk.
I want to add to it's kind of, man, I didn't think this was going to go straight into scripture. But like we were tasked with doing a word study, but like an entire and honestly Moses walked me through the whole thing, so shout out to Moses.
Hey, look, last time he led people through it was 40 years in the wilderness, so careful.
It wasn't his fault though, so
you're not wrong.
It's my fault. Okay, so Proverbs 18 verses 1-3. It says, but I don't like this translation perfectly. It doesn't capture every. Sure. All right.
We can talk about it.
It says, an unfriendly person pursues selfish ends and against all sound judgment starts quarrels. Fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinions. When wickedness comes, so does contempt, and with shame comes reproach. So like, let's just focus on, I guess, verse 1.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Do you remember like an ESV version or
a vague?
Yeah.
This is how good we did in our class this last month.
Sorry.
But the phrasing of it is more a person who is cut off.
Yeah.
Not cut off, but who has
been isolated.
Yeah, been removed. Yeah. And at least the interesting part to me, and I don't know if you got to the same place in your study of it. It's not very clear of if the community cut them off or if they cut themselves off from their community. And I think it's kind of intentionally vague.
Yeah.
I don't really agree with the way the NIV particularly takes that as unfriendly. I mean, yeah, that's one of the options, but really it's talking about someone who's doing life alone.
Yeah.
That's not good no matter what, but the reasons as to what brought that person in that space varies.
Yes, exactly. Because this is just, I guess, one way to view it.
Yeah.
When I was reading through it, I was kind of getting the same vibe. Something along the lines of, we don't really even know what brought this person to this point, but verse 2, fools find no pleasure in understanding, etc., etc. Like, some of the rest of the context kind of gives this sense of, and maybe you disagree, but it's almost like whatever caused you to get into that ISO zone, you are actively choosing to stay there, possibly. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be active. It could be a passive staying, but what it is you're not turning back to God. You're in, it's not solitude, it's isolation. And some of the reasons why I felt that that's how, or some of the reasons why it made sense to me in that respect was because when we had to do the word study, there were other verses that were used to basically translate a certain word. And as I was like comparing, it was giving this sense of like, there was a desire, how do I put this? There was a desire to essentially stay here because the word desire, I don't perfectly, do you remember the word? I don't. Tava? No.
Yeah, ta'ava.
Tava.
It means desire, but it also can mean craving. That's like the crazy part of it, is it has these both positive and negative connotations.
So I guess in short, with that, it was giving this sense of like, you could essentially desire, or you are essentially desiring this, and you're pulling towards this direction as opposed to looking back to God. And one of the verses that I was reading showed the exact opposite. And so it kind of gave me almost like a split screen view of what the choices could have gone towards. And then with that comparison, I was just like, oh, regardless, the person is just not choosing to look back to God. And I think that's a major component of what solitude encompasses. You kind of already suggested that, but that's just a little bit of help to express it better.
For sure. I think especially in that, how should I put it? In real solitude, I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Real solitude will bring you into healthy community. Isolation will divide you. Like isolation in any of the other forms will either bring you out of a healthy community, or it will bring you into an unhealthy community. Because as strange as it was, and this is kind of like where the thought popped in my mind as we were doing the series, because the whole series was focused on community. So what breaks your brain more than thinking about like being alone and being in community? And the more I sat with it, I'm like, oh, this is the heart of where true community starts, because it's also the heart of identity. In the space of real solitude, you come into contact with who God has always called you to be. But you also come into contact with all those things that you've applied to yourself, that have been applied to you, your traumas, all of that, and you realize how much it does not belong there. And we can touch on this later, but like, it's such a painful process to remove it. It is such an uncomfortable space to realize that you are not living the reality of your identity, that we tend to just push away. I think solitude is a terrifying thing because you are alone with God, until you realize that you are alone with the one person who cares more about you than anyone else does. Who wants to reform and change you. And even though it's a painful process to go through that sometimes, not even sometimes, most of the time, there is nothing more rewarding that gets you connected to your true identity. And out of that identity, you get to find a community who is all about that same identity. And I think that's the weird part of it, is it does divide you from stuff that you thought that mattered. And sometimes it divides you from people who you thought mattered. Not that they don't matter, but like, in your walk. And in reality, like the whole process, so by solitude, part of it is like on your active part of recognizing those things that divide you from being in real presence with God.
Mm-hmm.
The other part is just showing up.
Yeah.
It can go a bunch of different ways, but anyway, just some initial thoughts on that.
So I think what you're saying, for me, I never thought about how at least a healthy form of solitude would lead to a healthy form of community, and an unhealthy form of solitude would lead to an unhealthy form of community. And I feel like people wrestle with being in solitude, because I feel like, especially in the day and age we live in now, even though we're all alone, we're like constantly looking to be connected to something. And I don't think that's really solitude. I think sometimes that's just being lonely and wanting to kind of like have like a pick me up or like a coping mechanism for that loneliness. And I think it's difficult to accept that we are just going to be like with God.
Yeah.
And how do you do that in a way that you're accepting of it? You may wrestle with it, and you're okay with it being for however long God needs it to be. I think that's the other thing. Like sometimes, like I think oftentimes we don't know how long we're going to be in solitude. And I feel like for me, God put me in solitude for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah.
And I'm angry about that. And I was angry about that. I'm still angry about that. But when you were talking about the forms of community, I started realizing, because now this last year was the first year where healthy community came in. And now it's kind of, everything is kind of clicking to place of, because I also didn't do solitude in the best way. I was constantly fighting it. So I'm wondering if that's kind of what prolonged the process too. But I'm wondering if God's finally like, okay, now you're ready for a community that you need and they need you. But yeah.
It's funny because even like movies, like huge production companies know how to capture this instance, because like, for lack of better ideas right now, this isn't a production company per se in the movie sense like Hollywood, but like in Naruto, specifically Naruto, there's a scene or an instance where like he's focused, he's locked in, not to God per se,
Slightly different priorities.
yes.
Yeah.
But the idea is that we all actually kind of know that we need those moments to lock in.
Yeah.
The thing is, I think in a Western context, tend to think we need to lock in to ourselves.
And be busybodies, like self-help, like
Yeah.
feeding yourself.
Exactly.
Like,
I need to be like a monk in ISO.
but you might be alone, but you're so busy.
Yes. So you're not
Yes.
necessarily doing the whole human being thing. You're kind of doing what Corey always says, human doing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how are you meditating if you're still like, it's good to channel through some of these thoughts. Don't get me wrong. Actually, it's necessary.
Yeah.
Weekly basis. But my point is just, where do you go from there? Like, even if you were to map it out and get all these things done, you're getting somewhere, but you're not getting to know the creator. You're almost seemingly trying to, I guess, create your own means of salvation, and you're trying to figure out your own like heaven here on earth. And I'm like, but yeah, I mean, all of this will eventually, go away.
Yeah.
So one of the instances that I immediately think of in terms of like people who exemplify an idea of solitude, Christ is a given. I think Garden of Gethsemane, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't just stop there though. Like he's there, he's with the Father, and then he goes out and he's on task essentially. Another person is Enoch. We spoke about this. So it says, I think in Exodus somewhere, like Exodus chapter 5 or something, it explains that Enoch walked with God in some translations. Others translations say journey. We'll touch on that.
Yeah.
The word in Hebrew is halak. And when we look into it and just kind of focus on it, and you like look through all the different iterations of it, you see a progression essentially. It's not just like, it's not an instance. several.
This isn't a short stroll.
Exactly.
This is something bigger.
Exactly. And Enoch, I was when I was reading it, he doesn't have a whole bunch of highlights in the Bible, but when he does, they're kind of huge. Dude got translated at 365. So, right? It was 365?
Yeah, 365, 360, somewhere in there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But basically, I was like, okay, so this guy definitely did not sin. It doesn't really express that he was exactly like Job.
Yeah, it
per
doesn't
se.
say he's perfect or
No.
sinless or anything like that.
But then I'm like, well, okay, so what is it to walk, journey with God, right? And then if the aftermath is going up to heaven, were you guys that close the entire time that he was just like, yeah, you know what, just get up here? And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. But I think the way that I started to understand it is like highs and lows, like whatever it was, he gave it on to God. He like lamenting, frustration, Miriam screams kind of a thing. It was all like, this is what I got right now.
Yeah.
It may have never necessarily been a complete cutoff because we've seen what that looks like in the Bible. David does that.
Yeah.
David starts to get consumed by what's going on, and he allows himself to take action on things, and then we see his lament in Psalms 51. We don't see that for Enoch, so it kind of shows like in that solitude, or at least it gives us a bigger, broader picture of solitude. It's like journeying. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but it just means that you hand it over to him each and every time.
Yeah, it's this beautiful rhythm of showing up.
Yeah.
And in fully showing up and not holding anything back. One of the books, I just finished it, would recommend it. Relaxed by Megan Fate Marshman. I believe she's a pastor over at one of the churches over in Chicago. But the whole book is just 18 million different ways of saying, just be with God. Just be with God. And part of the things she talks about is that we can often enter our prayer life with all these preconceptions. And especially I think we know this whenever we're involved in some sort of public ministry, like, you know, the type of prayer that's basically like a written out sermon.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, dude, I already listened to one of these. Can you just get over this and land the plane? But her whole thing is like, no, it's something so much deeper that when you just bring all of yourself to God, and scripture says like when you don't have the words to pray, your grunts, your groans, that just raw being of being present. And I think you brought up Gethsemane. I think Jesus showed this pattern all the way through. When it tells he went off to alone, I think it depends on your translation, but like a lonely place to pray. And it uses all this terminology to tell you that this was the regular pattern of life. He'd get up early. And I think a lot of people say like, oh, well, this is why you do daily devotionals. Man, I mean, yeah, he's probably thinking about scripture or something like that, but really he was going out to be with the Father because he knew that was his starting point. That was his number one. That's where all of this had to come from. And I think a big part of, and I can only guesstimate that like in his early 30 years before his ministry even started, he had been practicing this pattern. Like this isn't something that just naturally happens. We don't naturally make the space. Instead, we, like everyone, like David, just lean more into our own actions of what we can do with this situation. How can I show up? And then you start to actually see that pour over in your prayers. Have you started knowing this, where you will give God like, hey, here's the nice solution. Here's like, it would be so wonderful if you would do this thing, if you would move this, but if it's not your will, it's all good. I'm good here. But like, I'd like you to actually do this. Have we ever just come to God with the thing and not tried to solve it?
What would you like me to do with this?
Yeah. Like and part of what Pastor Megan like talked about in the book was this, don't try and solve it. We're natural problem solvers. That is just like in our bones. We want to fix things instead of present things. But scripture continually calls us to a childlike faith.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a 5-year-old showing up to like mom and saying like, okay, Mom, now I have this thing. I cannot find my toys, but here's the plan. We are going to look under the bed. And we're going to, if it be your will, of course. What are your thoughts on that?
Here,
Like-
co-sign here, right here.
No, we treat God like he's this executive, and we come to him with all these nice action plans.
Yeah.
That's not how kids work.
Bro.
They go, Mom, I don't know where my toy is.
And then they cry.
I'm scared. We don't just say what we're feeling to God enough. Can you imagine if your prayers were more like that?
Bro.
Like, it completely changes how you approach prayer, and that this is not a formal message. This is you coming to your parent. This is you coming to dad, you coming to mom, and just being.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's part of solitude. That's part of what Jesus exemplified to us in the Garden of Gethsemane. This is like the deepest pain. He's begging God to take it away from him, and yet he still knows, like, nah, I know who I am. I know who I am, and I will follow your will.
Man, you hit on a lot. I want to piggyback and say, like, I think we were at a chapel. I'm not sure when it was perfectly, but maybe a couple months back. It's okay to be like, listen, I think I have a strategy.
Yeah.
Man, like, take this cup from me. But it always needs to land with,
Yeah.
but your will be done.
Yeah.
Like, it can't be like, your will be done. But, you know, like, I would really, like, because it overrides that.
It does.
And you start to lose focus of, lately, I've just been like, yo, God, dress me today. I like literally dress me, because I'm like, I don't even know what Michigan weather will hit me with tomorrow. It could be
no
like
clue.
50 degrees in the morning, and then like 80, and then 60, and then snowing. And that's really what life is. Michigan is just, you know, the desert.
Microcosm.
Yeah. It's a microcosm of being hit with stuff
Yeah.
without knowing that it's coming your way. And I'm talking about Michigan, but like life is literally like, when you're with God, he could prepare you. But when you think you know the plan, he's like, all right, go outside. You could wear
Give it a
shorts
shot.
if you want to.
Yeah.
Don't hit me up when it's not. Well, he still lets us. He still
Yeah.
lets us.
He's not as petty as us.
No. Oh, man, if I were God. Shoot. But all I'm trying to say is that you can lament, but you have to leave it open-handed.
Yeah.
Like, you have to leave your petition and whatever it is that's on your heart with open hands, so that he can do something about it, as opposed to grappling with him, like Anam was mentioning in the whole Jacob situation. So there was that. There's a book that I'm reading called The Emotionally Healthy Leader by, I think his name is Peter Scazzaro.
Yep.
And he wrote a book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. I would advise for whoever's listening to this, check those things out.
Yeah. Just read it. If you say you don't need it, you are definitely the person who
You are
needs
the
it.
one. I'm just letting you know. Because I was the no. I was, so Kenny put me on. Kenny like brought me to somebody's office, and they were like, yo, you need to read this book. And I was just like, okay, I'm down. I didn't really even refuse it. I immediately went to Audible. Audible is literally having some 99-cent sale thing right now.
Not sponsored.
But it could be for the
I'm open.
I'm sorry. Anyways. So 99 cents each month,
Yeah.
and they give you a credit. And I'm like, but my point is,
Yeah.
I used that credit to be able to get it after I heard the little clip. It gave you like 5 minutes, and I'm hooked, because it talks about doing. It talks about like people. It's for leaders, but I'm telling you that each of us is a leader in our own way,
Absolutely.
and we really need to tap into what it means to be completely dependent on God and not self-reliant. Because when we're self-reliant, we burn out quick. When we don't allow things to be given over to God, man, he'll let you do it for a season. You'll feel like you're on top of the world, and then you'll be like, wait, what? Why is everything getting dark? So
100%. I mean, I don't know why this is the image coming in my mind, but like I babysit my nieces when I'm down in California, and just some days they're given attitude. I'm trying to help them like do the most basic task at whatever, but they no, I want to do it. I'm like, all right, kid, I'll be here when you need me. And you just sit there and watch, make sure they don't like fall off a cliff and die as they just tire themselves out. And then eventually they're laying on the ground. They're like, I can't do this. And I'm like, all right, do you want me to help you? Like, yeah,
That's cool.
right, let's do this.
I like
And I think we fall into that so often.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. It comes down to the self-reliance thing. Probably the dumbest statement I've heard is God helps those who help themselves. Like, no, man, that's completely neglecting giving it to God first. Of course, you have a role. You show up. You have to be active. It doesn't mean you're just like sitting passively going through life. That's not what it's about. It's about giving it to God first. And it's about being selective of the things which he's calling you to pour into. If you are self-reliant, you will try to do everything, or you will continually try to do the wrong things. Either one of those is bad because it's taking you away from the things he's actually calling you to.
Yeah.
I think when this has maybe been your guys' experience, but like the actual things he tells you to do are so few and far in between. Otherwise, it's like almost always, hey, I just need you to show up to be at the right place at the right time.
You know, I feel this whole time I'm like this listening. I'm like having a conversation with God. Where it's like,
Those are the best.
was this meant to be? Like, because so I feel so John and I had a conversation last night, and we're like, we're really good at doing. We're really good at doing. Not that we do well. We're just really good at doing.
You're good at
Just
getting it
doing.
through. Yeah.
Hopefully that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I don't, and I'm, so for me, like, I'm burnt out. And I'm just like, I don't want to do anymore. And I think the scary part was, so God had put me in moments of, like years of solitude, actually, like where it wasn't that I cut off myself from friends. I just didn't have community.
Yeah.
So like that solitude was very real. And I feel like I went from solitude to immersed in community where, because my personality is a doer, like I like just to do things because there's a sense of control, I guess. And, you know, that I feel like I stopped hearing God. And that's what started to become really scary, is I was like, I feel like I'm not even asking God if I should do something. I feel like I'm not going to him with it. I'm not waiting for him to answer if it's a yes or no. I'm just like, especially, it's for ministry. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Like, whatever, it's for people. Like, they need help. Let's do it. And you think that you're going to be a bad or horrible person. Like, this is the guilt that I go through, is like, I know how to do it, so I could just help. But it's like, but you don't have the capacity. You don't have the energy, the time. Like, is God even telling you to be that person?
Yeah.
And I feel like some of the things that I have learned in solitude, I'm not even like using it now as I'm coming in community, where I'm like, oh, I need to go back to God. I need to go to God in the morning. I need to go to God in the afternoon. That Emotionally Healthy Spirituality book, it broke me because it required you, I think we talked about this already, but it required you to go to God twice a day, and for 2 minutes each time, just sit there in silence. And I couldn't. It was it was insufferable. Like, because it's so hard to take everything out of your mind and be like, all right, God, I'm just sitting with you and enjoying time with you, and not even trying to do it where I selfishly want an answer,
Of course.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like, I just want to be with you. And that kind of, when we were reading that book, it made me realize how uncomfortable I am just to be with God, because maybe there's a lack of trust and I don't like losing control. And that was a huge lesson that I'm still learning right now.
So when we were reading that book, and I actually want to go back over it. So he called it daily office.
Yeah.
And basically, you would check in once, twice, or maybe even 3 times a day. And no, I think it was just morning and evening. Right?
Yeah.
And I started to get creative with these 2 minutes of silence. Like I'm like, okay, just shut up, just try. And I'm like, I can't. Like I have so many things I want to ask. I'm like, all right, if we're gonna be here, I have this going on and this and this and this and this. And I'm like, John, just stop. And I couldn't. I didn't know how. And then eventually, it kind of started to work, and I started to realize some of the only times that I stay silent is when I start getting grateful. Like I don't petition, at least. I'm not necessarily perfectly silent, but when I'm not asking for stuff is when I'm reflecting on what he's already done. And I just sat in that and I was like, yo, thank you for this. Like, and I would sit on it for a while, and there would be moments where like I would try to do this outdoors, and every time we would pass, like I would pass the house at like 6 a.m. I'd be like, man, you gave me a home. And I didn't even necessarily deserve that, and I didn't even have the funds for that, but you did that. And it kind of moved my heart to be at a place of just stillness.
Yeah.
And then after a couple of moments of just being grateful, that's when I would hear something like, hey, I am here, you can hear me, move forward in this. And I'm like, oh, that's random, that had nothing to do with what I was just talking about, but I appreciate that. But you're right, I think it's difficult. I still struggle with it, and I think I need to go back to that discipline, because think about it, how often are you telling God you're that grateful for him?
Yeah.
Like in my world, like I don't do it enough is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And I think we can all like spend a couple more moments each day. What's funny is, man, I really should get sponsored. The Finch app. Go get it, bro. Like, sorry. The Finch app prompts, it's like a daily habit tracking, self-care thing, and you get to dress up your little finch and throw it out, whatever. But one of the things that they prompt that comes as one of the like presets is what were you grateful about today?
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, if we all just did that once a day, we'd be a little closer to God. But we tend to forget stuff like that. And now I'm like, every single day, even if it's forced, I'm like, all right, what was I grateful for?
Yeah.
Like, let's really think about it. And sometimes I'm just like, I'm grateful for now. Check, I did it. But then there's other moments where I'm like, you know what? I really ought to slow down. But yeah, gratitude.
For sure. And I think you both are touching on a really important point. In that, number one, if someone is just starting out in the practice of solitude, it's called a spiritual discipline for a reason. This is hard. This is like working out. You gotta show up and give your all, even if your all is like next to nothing.
Yeah.
And it's about the consistency of it. And I think what's really important is for each person to find something that works. Yeah, like your different rhythms. For me, I have to be out and about walking. That's like, it's half of it is just keeping my body busy, and then the other half is it gets me to more and more environments where I'm just noticing the world around me. Like it's so easy for me to naturally just be in my head all day. Like that's how I'm built. And so for me to get outside and have to just notice things, like the place where I practice solitude is over here. There's a little farm next to the school we go to where if you go down, it's like maybe a mile or two, and you're just walking by a river, walking by farm with like sheep, and it's a whole vibe. I was actually just there this morning. And when I'm there walking, there's no one else around for like half a mile, which again, as a non-people person, I appreciate. But I get to just be walking with God. And for me, that's the motif that works. It gets me into that space. And I think for someone starting out, just trying to find the different rhythms and showing up even on days where you suck at it. It's like anything that you practice. When you start, you will be awful, but you start to notice the things that trip you up.
Yeah.
Like I think that's one of the most helpful pieces of solitude is you start to realize, oh, my life is filled with distractions that I didn't even realize were distractions.
Yeah.
Yeah, like things that just weigh you down. And like for me, it's the anxiety, it's the overthinking. And I realize I'm going into this space trying to solve my own problems because I don't trust that God can. And like that was convicting. That hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was able to admit it and just give that to God,
Mm-hmm.
it opened the door to be a little bit better of like, all right, I run into that same thing again the next time. Like, okay, but how many of those things did I figure out this week? How many of those things did God figure out this week? Most of the time, my rate is not that great.
Yeah.
It's usually definitely less than 20%, but like it takes practice. It takes showing up, and it takes giving your all. So like, especially when you're starting out, I think it's recognizing those distractions, and then it gives you opportunity of what can I do about these distractions?
Yeah.
What can I put away? What is taking my heart right now that needs an adjustment?
So one thing that we actually decided last night was there are going to be good things that we have to say no to.
Yeah.
And that hurts because it feels like it's a reflection of you, like you're being selfish or you're, I don't know, like whatever. And I think when you said that, it just took me back a little bit in terms of like, how do we say no to good things? You know,
You're speaking about like opportunities to do ministry. Is that what you're saying?
just anything. Like, is God
good
telling you to do something?
Got you.
Right? Because I feel like, again, I think that this is just how I perceive society now is like, I feel like we're all trained to be busybodies.
Yeah.
And I think it's difficult to say no. Like there's a book that I was reading that said like there's gonna be shiny things on the road. And even if they're good, they're shiny for a reason. They're meant to distract you.
Yeah.
There's a bigger thing at play here, and you have to really discern what is actually God telling you. Yes, this is for you versus this is not for you. Have someone else that's gonna do this. You have to keep going.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And it's actually kind of like going a little deeper into what you're saying. I've never thought about this, but it hit. Be aware of the shiny stuff.
For sure.
Because like anything worth having isn't always presented to you on a platter.
Yeah.
And hey, I'm ready. I'm like, this is it. Like those are like telemarketers. That's pyramid schemes right there.
It's instant gratification.
Bro. And often our flesh will pull us into it.
For sure.
And I'm like, yo, seriously, pause and think and take a moment. Like when you mentioned the nature thing,
Yeah.
I'm sad that I didn't do it this week because I did it like twice last week, and it's always a soft reset.
Yeah.
It actually almost feels like a factory reset.
Honestly.
Because I go out there and I'm like, you know what? I don't even know what I have to say to you. And by the time I'm coming back up the hill from like the river that I go to, I'm like, Lord, like I'm like my stony heart is all broken up.
Yeah.
I noticed that's like the number one objective that I have nothing else to do in my life on a daily basis aside from breaking my stony heart, allowing my stony heart to be broken.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is going to God, giving him the first fruits of my day, and asking him to take this contrite heart and cleanse it and allow me to be malleable so that he could shape me. We were talking about what was it? It was Proverbs or something where it was talking about the king whose heart is like water, and God's able to channel that in every which way to bless people. See, the thing about that is it's not going to work if it's ice.
No.
It's stuck. How we've all attempted to try to eat a slushie that wasn't slushing. It doesn't move. It's not malleable. It's not working in your favor. You got to let that thing dissolve.
Yeah.
And in the same way, your heart needs to do the same thing every single morning, because self-efficiency and this world and societal norms will have you convinced that you have it all figured out. And then you get all rock solid again and you're like, yeah, I got this. And you don't even notice it when it's happening. Like for me, I have to walk as well. Like high key praise God for New Balances because
Not sponsored.
I'm telling you, listen. Anyways, but my point is just that he set me up to be able to walk more frequently, and I was like, all right, let's do it. And then I would start going down to like water is my thing. I don't know why, but we got kayaks and it just fits the vibe. And even if it's not kayaking, I'll go down to any water source, puddle down the street.
Just look at it.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Glass of water in the kitchen at night.
It happens. She caught me at no, I'm kidding. Anyways, but my point is just that like those moments, nothing. There's nothing around me. And I can lament if I need to. Most times that's really what it is, because I'm like, Lord, I'm scared. I think I have it figured out. That's already a problem. Like, let's rectify a couple of things. Like, that's the only thing that I try to do every time I come to God. I'm like, please shape me, because I think I have it figured out, and that's scary.
Yes, already a red flag.
Yo, I'm telling you. And he does it. Like, literally, he's like, yeah, I got you. And one of the things that he prompts on my heart is like intimate people in my life. Even sometimes people who are vulnerable and susceptible to hurt. It's like, sure, you think you're invincible. What about your dad? What do you make of that? And I'm like, my dad? And then I start thinking he's older and he's going through things and health complications. And he's like, all right, so tell me how you'll bulldoze through that one. Yeah. And I'm like, I can't. And honestly, that part, I think he always brings it back to that, because he knows that that's an entryway into my heart. It's like hey, listen, you think you got it made. You think you can figure it all out. But what about the people closest to you? Those who are around you, who need you to be open to me, to be able to pour into them. Because if this instant gratification thing, if this hierarchy in terms of like the earthly situation is all that matters to you, you're forsaking salvation. Yeah. And then you're forsaking being a conduit for God to be able to pour into others. And you might be compromising their salvation to some extent, because he may have been calling you into their lives so that you could be, you could be a beacon essentially, but you're over here shining the light on yourself. And
you said, and this was in another one of our conversations, but a while ago, I think you connected a lot of dots for me when you said, sometimes we have to even shake off the identities that we put on ourselves in this world. The things that are good, like connecting yourself with this, because nothing matters as much as that identity in God.
Absolutely.
And I love the way you phrased it, because you were like, any identity, any earthly identity that you put on yourself limits you. Any earthly identity will immediately make you smaller than what God is trying to grow you into. And that is so hard, because it's so much easier to define ourselves by the things that we can see. But then when you are turning to God, when you are letting him shape you and break your heart each of these times, because it's okay to have a hard heart when you've been defined by the world. Because it's like, well, I know who's in and who's out. Yeah. Right? I know what is good and what is not. I understand. But in each of those circumstances, you are living a limited life. You are. You are not crossing over into where he might be calling you to, because that's not what someone who is in X group does. And I the math of the kingdom works so much differently, and we always pop back to that one. But like one important quote that I love just sharing is one from Martin Luther, the Protestant reformer, or at least it's attributed to him. Maybe totally be. I don't think it was made up. I think it's phrased differently. But anyway, where he's writing like in his own journal, and he's saying something along the lines of, I have so much I need to get done today. I can't help but spend an extra 3 hours in prayer. And I'm pretty sure he said, I think it actually might be more. It might be 4 hours in prayer. And it's this real broken approach when you compare it to like how we approach things of, well, this thing is the more important thing, so I'm going to give more time to it, instead of, this thing is super scary and important, I need to give more time to God. Like, that's, I think, part of where the hardness of our heart can come in is we again start thinking like, this is my problem to solve.
Amen.
And the more we take that on, I think I didn't share this when we had done one of our previous talks, but I think I have 3 pieces of bad advice that we should follow.
Okay.
And one of them kind of touched on what you've been talking about. I think, okay, I wish I had my phone with the notes, but one of them is, I think we should waste more time. Mm-hmm. Number 1, waste more time. When you are thinking that every moment you have is so important and so precious that you can screw up God's plan by missing a 5-minute meeting.
Sheesh.
Or being late to something, or whatever it might. And that's not to say be unintentional.
Yeah.
No. But I think so many times we think we are understanding what God is calling us to in a situation when we haven't even slowed down enough to ask.
Sheesh.
And that takes stopping. And I think as part of that, it's the opposite of FOMO. It's miss out. Miss out. Don't you can be afraid of missing out, but I would recommend that every person at some point or another misses out. Because especially at least here in the Western American context, we have this whole thing of efficiency, of we need to do all these things, get all the points hit, right? Try going and seeing something that you feel socially pulled to go do and completely miss out on it.
Sheesh.
Well,
and sit there.
Won't that liberate you?
The third one was another spicy one that I can't remember right now, but the basic idea being when you slow down, when you miss out, when you waste time, I think you'll start to realize that God is really speaking in those moments. And honestly, I think that's part of what solitude is saying no to these other things that can be good because your life needs space.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, God has been trying to tell you something and you have pushed it away by filling it with other things.
Wow.
Good, beautiful things sometimes. And this was like one of the first talks I always give on being able to say no, is realize that every one of your yeses has 3 no's at least to other things that time could have been for.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're always choosing against something else. And part of this even touches on pastoring, in that I think, this is a whole other spicy thing, but I think there's so many ministers out there who are pouring into the church and they don't realize that it's just for self-validation, and their families get hit for it. They suffer for it. When God never told them to say yes to those things. God never told them to be pouring every ounce of themselves in the church, and they go around saying they're proud of it. Don't be proud of it. God didn't call you to that. He called you to love your family.
And there's this like concept of you're on fire.
Yeah.
For Christ, for the Lord, for ministry. It's like, how are you able to gauge if a person's on fire? Oh, they're up till like 5 a.m. doing the Lord's work. Their wife, meantime. Yeah. Their husbands. Their kids.
Yeah. How often is that story of PKs suffering and hating ministry, hating the church?
Yo, so many PKs, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Pastors' kids, by the way.
Yeah.
Sorry, just in case.
Clarification. Like that story comes up so many other times, and that I think it's because people are, number one, thinking that what they do is so much more important than who they are being.
Or who God is.
Yeah, exactly. And that they're prioritizing the actions to the detriment of their being with God. I think absolutely choose the actions God's calling you to, but also realize, like, this is not about hitting a quota of production. This is not about reaching this goal. In fact, and this kind of goes back to some of the stories that we were focusing on, right?
Yeah.
I noticed this really weird pattern where two of the most important people in the Old Testament who are like highlighted, right? You have Moses and you have the prophet Elijah for the two different periods of time, right? Both of them never reached the goal, as it were. I mean, Moses took his people out of Egypt, but he did not bring them into the promised land. In fact, it was kind of sad. He got to go up on a mountain and die watching them like head toward it, and he didn't get to finish that goal. Instead, he got to suffer with everyone else, spending 40 years walking around nowhere while these people be dying off.
God.
By our standards, that's not a win.
Yeah.
The prophet Elijah, his moment, right? He spends his whole like career being on fire, pointed, focused, and literally at a point where it's just him versus a whole nation that is turned against God. He gets him on a mountain, is so courageous, shows fire coming down from heaven, burning up, completely blowing away all the people. This should be the mountaintop moment. Israel gets his act together, turns around, and what happens? Jezebel shows him like saying, "This hasn't changed anything." The man goes, runs to the hills, and honestly, it's a beautiful story. Read it. First Kings 19. One of my favorite chapters in the whole Bible. Because literally he just goes to God and he's like, bro, I just can't right now. Just strike me down. I'm done.
Yeah.
And then an angel comes like, you seem like you need a snack and a nap. And like a toddler being put down, he gets a snack and a nap. And he tells him, hey, you need to just chill because it's going to be a long journey here. Take a minute, man.
Yeah.
Take a breather. And then he goes. And this is one of the other patterns that pops up. He takes 40 days, right?
Yeah.
Moses, 40 years, and then a bunch of 40s in his life. And he takes 40 days up on the mountain with God.
Yeah.
And then Elijah, 40 days in the wilderness to go to God. Both of those are times of solitude.
Yeah.
And then we see more in the story that, again, these guys were not perfect.
Yeah.
They messed up a lot.
Yeah.
And yet we see this beautiful pattern between them of them just giving everything to God, their whole selves. And then even past that, because then this started with one of our conversations, we was like, well, why did Enoch just go straight to God? And I thought like, who else got kind of just brought up? And yeah, Moses died, but like he got brought up to God. And then Elijah was brought up to God. Both these people who failed their ministries. Who failed in the thing that they were supposed to do. But did they? Or were they playing a different game? I use this analogy. I'm sad I didn't get to use it when we had our last talk, but what we have to understand is when we're following God, we're playing a different game.
Yeah.
If I go up to the basketball court and I show up to everybody and then I kick the ball, what are the looks I'm going to get? It will be like, are you okay? Have you been? But if I walk up to a soccer field and I kick the ball, it's like that is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
The world looks at Christians who take the time, who miss out, who do all these other things differently, like we're crazy. And it's because we're playing a different game. We're called to a different game with this. And I think that reality is hard, and that's why we go to solitude. Is reminding us what are the rules of this game. And then just take it a little bit further. Then who are the two people who Jesus meets on the mountain? Elijah and Moses. The two people who failed in their ministry as it was on earthly grounds, but they played that role that God called them to.
So it makes me realize like the reason why we want to do ministry things so badly we keep doing is because we put ourselves in the center. And it's like, no guys, like Jesus, God is the center, and we are all part of this bigger plan, and God is going to use some people where in their lifetime they're going to do a lot. And then there's in other people it's not going to look like they're doing a lot, but it's still something that God is using them for in his purpose. Because sometimes, like for Moses, he needed to get the people through Israel, whole generation die off, so that their kids can enter the promised land. And he himself couldn't. And that is sad. but that's what God needed from him.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think anyone would want to be in that position.
No.
I think honestly, like, that's pride, but like,
Yeah.
you don't want to, because it's like, I'm not even the one that's unfaithful, God, they are, and I have to suffer the consequences, and I can't even enjoy this promised land before I die. That sounds crazy.
One thing you mentioned in the past, man, you like a therapy session for me.
I know.
I charge by the hour.
Yo. So basically, maybe we could wrap it up on this, but you mentioned contextually, there's one other who seemingly failed that mission.
Yeah.
His name is Jesus Christ. It's weird because by our standards, us as Christians now understanding retroflect.
Yeah.
No.
Retrospect. Sure.
Yeah. At the time,
Yeah.
you were supposed to be a warrior king. You were supposed to come in and desolate, annihilate.
Yeah.
Let's make you a king. You're feeding all these people,
Yeah.
all these miracles. He's like, that's not what I came here for. I'm on mission. Well, what's your mission? My father knows. And I know because I spend time with my father. You could get so sidetracked by groups of people telling you what your purpose is just because you're not listening to your father.
Yeah.
You're not spending time talking to God. You get sidetracked and you lose the ministry. You lose the form of evangelism that God has bestowed onto you. Because now you're out here trying to look like a warrior king.
Yeah.
The only way that you're able to do that is by the only way, let me clarify, that you're able to tap into what God has created you to be. I used to think it's limited, like, oh, yeah, I'm just like an Afro-Latino kid from New York. And for me, that was enough. I'm like, I mean, come on, that's awesome in my mind. But then God was like, you're so limited, bro.
Yeah.
That's it? That's all you got? You got some J's? Wow. I love the J's, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
I'm calling you to higher things. And I'm like, and he tells me often, yo, stop this narrative of like, these are the corners in which you fit in. You keep letting people box you in. You don't want to be more than that. Have you ever thought that the moment where you stop feeding into these fantasies here on earth is the moment that I'll be able to put you further ahead of whatever you could have conceived on your own? And I'm like, okay. And I attempt, and honestly, sometimes he blows my mind. Well, actually, every single time. But it's hard for me to even process. But moving into ministry now, as a pastor, I'll hear things like, yo, you got to look like this and be like that and do this way. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so I do this and that and rub your tummy and tap your head at the same time. I'm like,
Yeah. Do a little dance.
and the thing is, I'm like inclined to like participate in that because I took my eyes off Jesus. So I'm like looking at man and I'm like, okay, so you have it all figured out, right? You do. And I genuinely believe it sometimes, subconsciously at least, and allow fear to creep in. And that's what happens when you're in isolation, not in solitude. You start hearing all these voices telling you, yep, this is who you're supposed to be. If you're not it, you're not qualified. And I'm like, did you ever see that we had a channel called Stand? Anyways, and this is
Not
just
sponsored.
my small appeal is just live outside of the framework that people are trying to place you in. Allow God to blow your mind. You may not get the job done in the sight of the other people, but you will live out the ministry that God has given to you. God, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. They will guide you. They are your spiritual, that's the mentor that you can't not have. And I used to go around seeking for mentors, and praise God that he's given me great counselors, Moses. Shout out. But they're limited. Even Moses was limited. He couldn't get the whole job done. Right? And so we need to expect that beyond all other things, without any shadow of a doubt, God will always be there. He'll always be available to us in the stickiest situations where cell phone receptions just, cut out. I'm in the bush somewhere. Like, I'm sorry, what? God will hear you and he will respond. It's not theoretical. It's a very real thing. But I leave it with that. Is there anything that you would want to share for anyone who might be listening and feels
I think it's to understand that I do think that God has a plan and purpose for each one of us.
Absolutely.
But the only way for him to use us is we need to be able to hear his voice. And I think that the only way to do that, to learn what his voice sounds like, is in solitude.
Amen.
Absolutely.
I'm so excited. I don't know why.
No, I echo all that. I have maybe a story
Let's go.
that we get into it. So, like I said, I do my solitude like walking down by the farm and going down. It's this winding road that also goes by a river. And let's see, this is a while ago, but I was going through a really hard time with God. Honestly, not just him. Every part of my life felt like it was falling apart, and all the things that I thought were going to be my firm foundation, my like solid rocks in life, were falling through. I had a bad fight with my girlfriend. I had my best friend say like, "Hey, you really hurt me on this. I need space." And then at the same time, I get a call. My aunt just passed away, and there was something else that just like, it was like that last straw moment, right? And I went out walking. I didn't want to talk. I was so ticked off. I was so angry at God, like beyond just pulling over. And I had all these feelings inside, and everything was going in like 8 different directions. And I walked down there. It's raining, and it's miserable and cold. It must have been like the saddest thing to watch from a distance. No one else goes walking in the rain. But I'm going down there, and the whole time I'm trying to be a good Christian. I'm trying to do the thing you're supposed to do of like, oh God, I give this to you. I feel, whatever about this, and, trying to do all of these things, but the anger just keeps boiling up against him. And I remember I'm saying all these different things, and I'm getting more and more accusatory as we go. And honestly, I was just getting more and more annoyed, because over there, it can be a little louder, a little bit quiet, depending on what's going on. But that particular day, there was like a bunch of geese flying over by. There's a whole flock of birds all in the trees that were just chirping and making all these sounds. I could hear the river was, because the rain was all flooded up. Your branches, winds, all these other things going on. And when I had stepped foot on the ground there, the first part of my prayer was like, you are not a good God. You are the God who takes away. You are the God of pain. You are the God who brings hurt. And I was leveling all these things against him. And as I'm walking, I'm not feeling his presence. I'm just like, what's the point? What's the point? You're not even a God who shows up. It's so loud here. I bet you're not even listening. And I tell you, this messed me up. Immediately, everything went quiet. To have like a whole flock of birds in the trees, geese going, all of it was like the random noise of just nature. Everything went silent. And I immediately just fell on my knees, and I went, I am a sinful man who does not know what he's saying. And God spoke to me in that moment. He said, you can say whatever you want against me, but don't you dare say that I'm not here with you. I think that is the thing, not just about solitude. I think it goes even beyond that, but God is always right there with you. And solitude just lets us beautifully acknowledge that and be open to that, to be able to walk with him, realize he's the God who never leaves us alone. There is nothing we walk through that he is not right there with us.
Amen.
That gave me goosebumps.
I
gave the geese goosebumps. Sorry, I have to break the tension.
No, that was...
Sorry.
It's a lot.
I think that was a really good way to end off too, because I feel like...
That's how real it is.
Yeah, like that's really it.
Yeah.
All right.
Have a good Friday. Catch you next year.
So thank you for being on. I feel like this was a needed conversation. I really felt like we needed to have the conversation. God kept telling me specifically, you need to have Corey on this specific day, and you felt that way too. And I think it's because we needed to hear these things for this specific time.
I needed it today too.
So thank you, Corey.
Of course. Anytime.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening, and I guess catch us next time. Bye.
You're